All right, let's talk about something that anyone who's ever tried to build anything in New Jersey has run into: the construction permit fee. It can feel like this incredibly complicated, almost mysterious part of the process. But believe it or not, there's a clear logic to it. And today, we're going to pull back that curtain and decode it, dollar by dollar. I mean, you've probably been there. You're planning a project, you're excited, and then you see the fee schedule, and it just feels like a black box. What are you actually paying for with that money? And why is it calculated one way for a new addition, but a completely different way for a simple renovation? Well, you're in the right place, because we are going to answer all of that.
You see these phrases all over the official forms, right? Cubic feet of new construction, value of construction. They're not just jargon. Think of them as clues. Each one is a piece of a puzzle that tells you exactly how your fee is being calculated. And today, we're going to solve that puzzle together.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the big why. Where does the money go? Then we'll break down the bill you get into its component parts. We'll get into the real nitty-gritty of the calculation methods and tackle that huge question of why costs are so different from town to town. And we'll wrap it all up with a toolkit you can actually use.
First things first, let's follow the money. Because these fees aren't just some random charge that government came up with. They have a very specific, and honestly, a very critical purpose.
This right here, from the code itself, is the core idea. The entire system is designed to pay for itself. What that means is the people who use the system, the builders, the homeowners, the developers, are the ones who fund the safety oversight for their own projects. This is really important because it means that your neighbor who isn't doing any construction isn't paying for your inspections through their property taxes.
And let me be absolutely clear about this because it's a huge point of confusion. A permit fee is not a tax. The money doesn't go into the town's general fund to pay for roads or parks. It's a legally dedicated user fee. The money you pay is calculated to cover only the actual real-world costs of running the local construction office. We're talking about the salaries of the inspectors and plan reviewers, the vehicles they need to get to your job site, all of it.
Okay, so you get that permit bill. It's not just one single number. It's actually a combination of a few different charges, and each one has its own job to do. Let's peel back the layers. So if you picture your total fee as a donut, you'll see that the biggest part of it, by far, is something called the local enforcement fee. Then there's this other, much smaller slice, which is a statewide fee called the state training surcharge.
That big piece of the donut, the local enforcement fee, that's the main event. Every single town sets its own fee schedule in their local laws, their municipal ordinance, and the rule is they are only allowed to charge enough to cover their specific operating budget. They can't legally use it as a profit center. This local control is the single biggest reason fees vary so much, and we'll come back to that.
So what about that smaller slice? That's the state training surcharge fee. See, New Jersey mandates that all code officials get continuous, extensive training to stay up to date. This small surcharge, which is tacked on to almost every permit, is what funds that entire statewide educational program. The town collects it and then sends it up to the state every quarter.
And here's the thing. Unlike the local fee, this part is identical everywhere. The state sets these exact rates. For new buildings, it's a tiny fraction of a cent per cubic foot. For renovations, it's a tiny fraction of a cent for every dollar of value. It might not seem like much, but added up across the whole state, it's what ensures a consistent high level of expertise in every single town.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting. How does your town take your project plans and turn them into an actual dollar amount? Well, they use one of three main methods, and it all comes down to the kind of work you're doing.
First up, volume-based. This is for brand new construction, like a warehouse or an addition on your house, anytime you're creating new enclosed space. Let's use that warehouse example. Say it's 50,000 square feet with a 30-foot ceiling height. That gives you 1.5 million cubic feet. First, the state fee. 1.5 million times that tiny state number is about $5,565. But now for the local part. If the town ordinance charges, say, 5 cents a cubic foot, that's another $75,000. You can see right there how the local ordinance is the real driver of the cost.
But what if you're not adding space? Maybe you're doing a kitchen renovation. In that case, they use value-based fees. It's tied to the estimated cost of the work. So let's say you're doing a $40,000 bathroom remodel. The state surcharge is tiny, just $76. But then you have to look at the local ordinance. If it says something like $25 for every $1,000 of value, that would add another $1,000 to your permit cost.
The third method is like ordering from a menu.
It's a list of flat fees for specific things, usually for plumbing or electrical. The ordinance might literally say $15 per sink, $75 for a water heater, or $1 per electrical outlet. Building a new deck is a great example of a hybrid. You might have a value-based fee for the main structure, plus a unit rate fee for each and every footing you dig.
You know, the system is even smart enough to handle weird edge cases. Take elevating a house at the shore. The roof gets higher, so it's technically an addition, but you're not adding any usable living volume. So which rule applies? The state actually clarified this, saying in this unique case, you have to switch to the value-based method. You calculate the fee on the cost of the lift, not on volume that doesn't really exist. It shows there's a real logic at play here.
So this brings us to the million-dollar question, the one everybody asks. Why on earth does it cost me $2,000 to permit a project here when my buddy in the next town over paid $3,000 for the exact same job? The answer is actually pretty simple, but it's the key to the whole thing.
It all boils down to this comparison. The rules for how to build something safely, the Uniform Construction Code, are identical across the entire state, non-negotiable. But the cost to enforce those rules is completely local. Town A might have lower overhead and inspector salaries than Town B. So even though the building rules are the same, the cost to run the office is different, and that's reflected in their fees.
And the state intentionally gives towns this flexibility. Now, if a town wants to raise its rates, they can't just do it overnight. By law, they have to review their budget every year. If their costs, like salaries or insurance, go up, they can propose a fee increase. To do that, they must introduce a new ordinance at a public town council meeting. That meeting is your chance. It's the official venue for citizens to ask questions, review the justification, and voice their support or opposition.
So now that we've taken the engine apart, how do you use this knowledge? Well, you can actually predict your permit fees with a pretty high degree of accuracy if you just know where to look.
Here's your 4-step plan. 1. Know your project type. 2. That tells you which calculation method they'll use. 3. And this is the golden ticket. Get a copy of the town's fee ordinance. Check their website or call the clerk and ask for the Uniform Construction Code fee ordinance. That document is the Rosetta Stone. It has all their local rates listed. And finally, 4, add in that small state surcharge and voila, you'll have a very clear picture of your total cost.
So, to wrap it all up, just remember these key things. Fees are for safety, not a general tax. Your bill is always 2 parts, the big local fee and the small state one. The type of project you're doing dictates how the fee is calculated, and the ultimate source of truth for your town's costs is always going to be that local fee ordinance.
So the next time you look at a permit application, it's not a black box anymore. You know it's a direct investment in the safety and quality of your project. You know where the money goes, how it's calculated, and how to find the numbers for yourself. The dollar has been decoded. So the only question left is, what's the next step for your project?